Hey everybody, I'm back again here with another voice actor, voice impersonation tip. Although I guess this is a bit more like more so an educational video rather than a tip, but you might take it as a tip one way or another. So today I'd like to talk about types of impersonations and the distinction between them. As far as I'm concerned, there are two specific types of impersonations that you can do. The first type is capturing the essence of a voice, and this is where you focus primarily on getting the tone of voice correct, getting the cadence and the speech pattern and the general essence or general personality of the voice accurately, but maybe not so much accurately. You're just trying to get it close enough to where anybody in the general audience listening to you will believe that you are that person, that they will recognize that voice very easily. If you were to put the impersonation back to back with the original, though, you would notice often very glaring differences. But just listening to the impersonation out of context, sure, it will sound amazing as is. The second type of impersonation, though, is dead on accuracy, where you are very much concerned with getting the exact tone of voice, the exact pronunciation of every vowel, every consonant, every type of phrase, and you are extremely concerned with getting the personality accurate, almost embodying the personality of the real actor or real character in yourself to justify why you would say certain things a certain way or why you would emphasize one part of a sentence instead of another, because that's what you really have to focus on if you want to do like maybe a legacy voice, which are voice actors who primarily take care of carrying on the legacy of a particular character, such as Mickey Mouse or Goofy or Donald Duck or Bugs Bunny or even Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. You're focused on capturing the same flavor of this character as the last person who played it. And so there you should be concerned with capturing the accuracy of the voice because you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that familiarity that is tangible in so many people's minds. But again, it could bounce back and forth because it's very difficult depending on how your voice is constructed and what type of like vocal build you have, like what kind of diaphragm you have, how much airflow is in your body, how much bass you can get, and other little small nuances in your physical makeup. Depending on those factors, you may or may not be able to get dead on accurate. It very much depends on what voices you are capable of doing and which ones you aren't. And you have to weigh those odds with every voice that you attempt to do and attempt to market yourself as being able to do. Now, to get more specific into some of these differences here, I think we can all agree, for those of you who are big voice actor fans, that the probably the most famous impersonation of anybody in the world has to be Maurice LaMarche's impersonation of Orson Welles. And this is primarily because he has been well known for doubling as an Orson Welles impersonator in almost everything out there. I don't think anytime anybody wants an Orson Welles impersonation, they go anywhere else but Maurice LaMarche. Even Tim Burton used him to double for the voice of this guy when Johnny Depp as Ed Wood meets Orson in a restaurant or I think a nightclub near the end of the movie. So while this guy was portraying the body of Orson Welles, Maurice was doing the voice. You can also hear Maurice do a very solid performance as an Orson Welles type character in the Studio Ghibli movie Pompoko, where he narrates the story all the way through. It was a very unusual choice because I don't think the original Pompoko even had narration, or if it did, I bet you it was not trying to sound like Orson Welles. So that was very much, I think, a Disney company artistic decision. But anyway, when you listen to Maurice's impersonation, especially when he's playing the Brain on Animaniacs or the Pinky and the Brain TV series, there is a distinctive difference between the real Orson Welles and Maurice's impersonation, like I've been saying. Especially if you compare the frozen peas commercial that Orson did or tried to do. It was just this long recording of him in a recording booth trying to do a frozen peas commercial in the late 70s. And if you listen to the original recording and then you listen to the Animaniacs episode of the Brain actually reciting this entire recording word for word in a similar situation, you'll notice a distinctive difference. But let me try to show it to you myself, and I'll link to the originals if I can find them in the description. But let me just give you an example here.
We know a remote farm in Lincolnshire where Mrs. Buckley lives. Every July, peas grow there. We aren't even in the field, you see. We're talking about them growing, and she's picked them. What?
In July.
I don't understand you. Then, what must be over for July?
When we get out of the snowy field.
Well, I was out. We were onto the can of peas, a big dish of peas, when I said in July.
Oh, I'm sorry, Orson.
Yes, always. I'm always past that.
You are?
Yes. What's that about where I say in July?
Can you emphasize a bit in July?
Why? That doesn't make any sense. Sorry, there's no known way of saying an English sentence in which you begin a sentence with in and emphasize it. Give me a jury and show me how you can say in July, and I'll go down on you. That's just idiotic, if you'll forgive me by saying so. That's just stupid. In July. I'd love to know how you emphasize in July. Impossible. Meaningless.
So, admittedly, that might not be the best Orson Welles impersonation. I'll let you decide. But you can see how much more subdued it is, because I'm actively trying to hear the real Orson Welles in my head from interviews that I've seen of him, characters I've seen him play, like in the James Bond parody film Casino Royale from 1965, or 64, I think it might have been. But if you listen to the real Orson Welles, especially when he's playing a live-action role like in Citizen Kane, he sounds like that. He's much more grumbly and sort of slurred-mouthed, especially once he got much bigger in the 60s and 70s, than you might expect him to be. Because when you listen to Maurice's impersonation, there's a bit more nasal in it. There's a bit more high-strungness and almost maybe even a Vincent Price quality to it. Let me try to do Maurice's version now.
We know a remote farm in Lincolnshire where Mrs. Buckley lives. Every July, peas grow there. We aren't even in the fields, Pinky. You see, we're talking about them growing, and she's picked them. What? I don't understand you. Then what must be over for July? Well, I was out. We were onto a can of peas, a big dish of peas, when I said in July. Why? That doesn't make any sense. Sorry, there's no known way of saying an English sentence in which you begin the sentence with in and emphasize it. Give me a jury to show me how you can say in July, and I'll go down on you. That's just idiotic, if you'll forgive me by saying so. Pinky.
See, I did just shove those in there, because this is a transcript on Wikipedia. But if you could pick up on the differences that I made there is more nasal in it. It's more strained on certain sounds. There might even be a little bit of Peter Lorre in it, I think, because the character of Brain was modeled after an animator who had a very low brow and very big eyes, kind of an almost angry looking face. And when you look at Brain, he almost has a Peter Lorre-ish face about him. So maybe Maurice actively put a bit of Peter Lorre, or maybe unintentionally put some into the voice, because it sounds less like Orson Welles and more like an Orson Welles Peter Lorre mishmash. So let me give you one more example of this sort of difference, where the original actor is much more subdued than the impersonation. So Vincent Price is the other one I wanted to talk about, because Vincent is extremely specific in the way that he sounds and the way that he carries himself, because he has a dual voice where he bounces between this high nasally sound and this low guttural, almost kind of sad and wavering sound. And if you sort of take the essence of Vincent into your brain and try to figure out how to do the voice, at least in my experience, I can almost sense when and why he would switch the voices, because he's essentially chewing scenery. He's exaggerating every performance he does and chews the scenery, and so he kind of overdoes his lines by taking it to that extreme end of his spectrum and then bringing it back in. So like at the end of a sentence, he will go off the deep end and then come right back. Example. These are a couple of lines from The Thief and the Cobbler.
"O greatest king of all the earth, this low-born cobbler of no worth attacked me in the square today. Shall we take his head away?" "Aha, you've fixed Yum Yum's shoe, you've done it very well. And now she has no need of you, and we can put you in a cell."
So yeah, that's essentially what he does. He also does that sort of thing for the character of Radigan in The Great Mouse Detective. He's a little more exaggerated there, you could say, but trust me, if you watch The Thief and the Cobbler, that's like one of his greatest lesser-known performances ever. It's a shame that that film couldn't get finished and released back in the early 70s. And to this day, it's still not finished, if you know anything about the story about that one. But to speak about The Great Mouse Detective for a moment, if you watch the villain song of Radigan from the movie, it's probably one of the best villain songs out there, just because of the fullness and richness of Vincent's voice and the way that he embodies that villainous character. He's always played very good villains, but I think the tangibility and almost the believability of a villain character in his roster was never more fully realized than in The Great Mouse Detective, because he is embodying something that's not really himself. He's putting his essence into a separate character that is all his own thing, rather than putting on makeup or putting on a mask or a wig or whatever else. And so when you listen to that villain song, it's very palpable. Even though it has that exaggeration that he has in his voice, it's still very palpable. But take a moment and listen to an alternate version, which I sort of stumbled upon randomly while looking up that villain song. I put a link in the description if I found it, though. I don't know if I'll find it again, but if I found it, it's in the description. I found what I assume is a sing-along version of the song from like one of those flip books with the buttons that you press and you listen to it. Not a sing-along tape, not a sing-along DVD necessarily, but a sing-along book. Or it could have been a DVD, which I have no idea why they would have dubbed it over. But what's funny is that not only are the lyrics of this alternate version of the song changed for no good reason, but the person doing the new Vincent Price voice is Corey Burton. Now, Corey Burton is very much a very well respected and very well deserving, amazing voice actor. He has been a go-to guy for the Disney company for many, many years. He carries on a couple of legacy voices. He is the current voice of the narrator for Goofy cartoons, which the last one he did was the Hook Up Your Home Theater system, which I think played before it might have been Pirates of the Caribbean 3, way back when in 2005 or 6. He also does the recent voice version of the voice for Captain Hook, Hans Conried's Captain Hook, which I would have to say that's his best, by far his best impersonated character. Because I can't imagine anybody getting Hans Conried's unique sound closer than that. It's still over the top, but not enough to be a problem, you know. But I think his Ludwig von Drake is also not bad at all. It's his own thing. But if he was really trying to imitate Paul Frees, I think he missed the mark a little bit. It's not a bad thing by any means. It's its own unique sound, like I said, the essence of the character. He's still getting the essence of the character, I think, but maybe some of the aristocratic nature of Ludwig von Drake, his unique sense of educational learning, his like scholastic professor-like air of intelligence, I don't think is there anymore because of what Corey personally is doing with the character. Because I think they made Ludwig a lot more hyper than he used to be, a little more high-strung, and a little more Doc Brown than he probably should be. So anyway, back to the sing-along tape. It's Corey Burton playing Ratigan by doing a Vincent Price impression. The problem, though, is that he makes it sound way too feminine, or femmy, or whatever is the proper term for it. And the big problem with that, though, is that what he does with it is a voice that is not good. It's not good on its own. It's not good for another character that it might fit to. It's just not good at all. At all. Like, he takes the exaggerated, high-pitched sound of Vincent Price over the mountain. I mean, if you think of Vincent Price's like guttural sound as going over the edge and into a canyon, the high-pitched sound is going up a hill and over a mountain. So Corey Burton takes the high-pitched sound way the hell over that mountain and does not come back. He very rarely ever goes into that canyon, if you get my really dorky analogy. So if it is in the description, listen to it, because I cannot fully explain just how wrong this impersonation it is. It totally misses the point of this character, and it's a shame, because I would think Corey Burton would have a better sense for this sort of thing. He would have a better attentiveness and a better sense of accuracy. I guess the best thing to say would be, I wish he would have listened to more Vincent Price performances, because what's funny is it doesn't even sound like he knows who Vincent Price is. Like it's almost like he's taking the voice of Ratigan out of context, self-contained on its own, and doing an impersonation of that, rather than doing an impersonation of Vincent Price, which is what he should be doing. So, you know, I would do an impersonation for you to show you the difference, but I think it's better if you listen to the original, and because I don't know if I'm comfortable with singing quite yet in my videos. So yeah, I mean, there are plenty of good impersonations that miss the mark on accuracy but sound great on their own. I don't think everybody should be a stickler for accuracy. I think it has its time and its place, and certain characters do require that you get the voice accurate rather than not so accurate. In fact, some actors have a voice that is so particular that if you don't get it accurately, you'll easily sound like somebody else. You might even sound like any number of other actors. I think Tom Hanks is actually one of those people. If you don't get his voice exactly right, you'll sound like any number of other people. If you don't get Robert Downey Jr. correct, you could sound like any number of other people. So take those things into consideration when you're doing impersonations, especially if you want to pass yourself off as a specific impersonation, like you want to make, like if you think you can make a career of it impersonating a certain actor, be very certain if your impersonation is as good as you think it is or is as good as you want it to be. Because if it's just the essence of the character, what do you want to do with that? Do you want it to be a funny impersonation, or do you want it to be an accurate impersonation? Do you want it to be something that might even get you in the door as being a person to impersonate that actor professionally in any number of films? Because there are certain voice actors out there who double for still living actors when the real actors aren't available for ADR. That's actually a job. I think it's a very rare one, but it has happened. It does happen. So if you definitely want to make a career of that, I think you have to be much more accurate than just the essence. You have to be almost exact so that no one will tell the difference. And there are notable examples of that, but that's probably a subject for another time. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of educational information. And I will definitely be coming back with more and more videos as the weeks and months go along, because I have plenty of other things I could talk about. And if you have any requests for any knowledge or information that I might be able to supply to you as far as how to do voice acting, not necessarily the industry of it, but more so the craft of it, because I don't think people really talk about the craft as much as they do about the industry and actually making a living at it. Because first off, I really think you have to get the craft down before you start thinking about the industry of it. So yeah, more people need to talk about the craft, because it's a very, very difficult thing to understand if you don't already understand some of it. So thanks again, and I'll see you all very soon.